we're back. The Championship returns this weekend. It's Norwich City's furthest away game, a trip to Swansea. England also in action on Saturday, but I think we'll forget about that one for the time being, and we'll focus on Norwich City's trip to Swansea. And with that, I'm delighted to be joined by Swansea fan Chris Durcan. Chris, to start off the pod, I mean, have you been missing the Championship action? I know you're a Welsh supporter, so and maybe don't want to cover over the World Cup for you, but have you been missing the Championship in Swansea City?
I was actually pretty excited going into the World Cup, as you probably can imagine, thinking about all the Wales and all that jazz. But now I am really looking forward to Swansea coming back with the World Cup. Maybe not living up to the expectations I hoped for, but come on, it was our first World Cup in 64 years. So it was good whilst we were there. And now with England still in it, Wales not in it, bring back the Championship. That's what I say.
I think anybody listening could probably pick up that you've maybe not got a natural Welsh accent. So there's probably a few question marks over that. Are we speaking off camera? You've got an interesting backstory to why you support Swansea City. So do you want to give our viewers a background into how you become a Swansea City fan?
Good detective skills there, Adam. I was actually born in Swansea, but I've actually lived in East London all my life. Funny story, my dad was best man at a wedding. They came from East London. Dad, massive West Ham fan, and went to the wedding in Swansea. I was born the day after the wedding in Swansea, only there for a few hours, but born in Swansea, got to be a Jack. So there you go. Born in Swansea, only there for a few hours, came back to East London. Didn't want to support West Ham, had to support the mighty Swans. Would see myself as Welsh as well, even though I don't really have any Welsh family. I was born in Wales, got to support Wales over England, got to support Swansea over West Ham. It is crazy. But there you go, massive Swansea City fan.
Yeah, prior to the break, Swansea weren't on the greatest run of form. I sort of just looked up 4 draws, 1 defeat in the previous 5 games. So it felt like probably much like Norwich City, the break came at a good time for Russell Martin and Swansea to kind of recoup and maybe drill home some different messaging to try and get the best out of this sort of second half of the season period. So do you think that Russell Martin and Swansea have benefited from the break, or do you feel that maybe that sort of longevity period we've had since those games has maybe made it difficult to then try and kick on again second half of the season?
Yeah, it's really funny. Just going back to the poor run of form, I think amongst it was maybe the build up to the Wales and build up to the World Cup that maybe us as Swansea fans weren't too overly realising how bad it was. It was 4 draws and maybe 1 defeat following that incredible South Wales derby, and you think 2-0 against Cardiff, you think you're going to go build up momentum and really maybe even push it for the top 2 if we won a few more games after that, and that usually does happen after winning a big derby. But then we went on to do 4 draws and 1 defeat, and you think, hey, it wasn't actually the best of runs going into the World Cup. So really a good time to have a break. I think naturally, in terms of the demands of the last few years, there's been loads of fixtures, and we know the many fixtures in the championships. A break's welcome for any club, and I think every manager would be happy with it. It's just who actually uses it well, who's used the break well, and we'll have to wait and see if we have done that. I think Russell Martin will be pleased. I think someone like Jamie Patterson's been coming back from injury. He was played a few games going into the break, but that break just allows him more time to get used to it. He did actually score in a friendly on the weekend against Dundee. We won 2-0. So that was good to get Patterson back, because he's such a key player. He was a key player last year for us, and he's going to be a key player for the second half of the season. We've really missed him the first half of the season, but with him back fit, that break really helping him. I guess Jalen now coming back from injury during that break, even getting some minutes under his belt for Wales, I think that is going to help us. And I think we could see a really different Swansea come the new year if we manage to stay injury free. But also, I think always international breaks. Russell Martin, he's a very good manager in my opinion. He loves time with the players, and I remember the early on when he was appointed last year. Always through international breaks, we always saw something new from Swansea. Just more of him trying to get his philosophy into the players. So I think more time with Russell Martin, he'll just be loving it with the players, and hopefully we'll be able to press on after the international World Cup break.
Yeah, I want to touch on Russell Martin in just a moment, but before we get there, a 15th place finish last season. You currently sit 8th in the Championship, and when you go look at the table, it's very close. You're only sort of 7 points off the automatic spot. So, what have you maybe made of the season so far as a Swansea City fan, and what are your chances and what are the expectations for the rest of the season? Are you expecting Swansea to be in amongst that playoff mix at the end of the season, or maybe are you targeting automatic promotion?
Yeah, good question. I don't think automatic promotion would have been our hopes before the season. That would have been incredible to finish anywhere near the automatics. I think we really wanted to be pushing though for a playoff position. I think around the 6th, 5th place would be a really good season, and we would really be delighted with it. I think, especially with how the season started, we weren't anywhere near the playoffs, and then somehow out of nowhere we did have a really good run that just pushed us up to the playoffs. And then funny that run going into the international break, and we still find ourselves only joint on points with QPR. So we're basically in the playoffs, just below them on goal difference, only 1 point behind Norwich with the game on the weekend. And I feel, who knows, we could do it, but there's so many teams around that. The Championship this season has just been so funny. Anyone could do it. So it really just depends with the push after the international break. Expectations, I think I'll be really delighted if we do make any position in the playoffs. But we'll have to wait and see.
I think the best connection we can make between Norwich and Swansea at the moment is the certain manager you've got in charge. You've already referenced Russell Martin, a club legend down here, and a man a few Norwich fans have maybe touted as a potential manager for us in the future. Depends, I suppose, how Dean Smith's tenure goes, but someone that I think a lot of Norwich fans would be very keen to see take over at Carrow Road. So what's he done so far at Swansea, since he's been in charge now, just over a year, and you obviously lost the likes of Flynn Downs as well in the summer, so he's had a lot of adversity to deal with as well. So has he maybe taken to the crowd, and what does Swansea fans make of Russell Martin?
Yeah, Steve Cooper was a manager before, got 2 playoffs for us, and we definitely overachieved under him, which is credit to him. But we weren't really playing the football that we wanted to be seeing. We weren't playing that Swansea way that we seem to have got back under Potter, and we're trying to get that back. And Steve Cooper was meant to then follow that on, and we went more defensive. We weren't creating chances that we wanted to be creating. And I think Russell Martin was appointed to get that going again. We really love seeing good football at Swansea, and Russell Martin, you can see he really does want to do that. We saw that at MK Dons, and we saw that through his time at Swansea so far. So I think the fans are overly supportive of him in most situations. There has been some spells that we definitely, like at times early on in the season, and sometimes last year, we were just conceding like late in the game, and we're winning position or maybe drawing, and we just letting in a silly late goal, and that was irritating fans, because it's things like you feel that can be stamped out of the game. We don't need to be going into that. But overall, I think just it is a delight just to watch good football being played at the Liberty again.
Yeah, you just said about sort of progressive Swansea way football. How does Russell Martin set up as a manager? Has there sort of been a certain playing style he's tried to implement, and what sort of formations does he tend to opt to? Has he maybe got sort of a fixed philosophy, or does it kind of just dramatically changed in play and maybe change up the system depending on who the opponent is?
Yeah, it's funny for a manager that likes to play good football. We often tend to do the 5 in the back, the 3 in the back, whatever you like to call it, which you usually wouldn't recognise with passing managers and people that like to play good football. But that's how he usually sets up, with the 5 in the back, then either the 2 in midfield with 3 up front, or the 3 in midfield with 2 up front, and it just seems to work. Seems to still create good football. It seems to get us going, and I think he maybe looked at trying to keep on that. Steve Cooper went for the 5 in the back, and it was completely different styles. So they both played the same formation, but then the way we play with it is completely different. So I think he's just always trying to work out different ways to create good time on the ball, try to get those passes going and build up really until we really create those good chances for us.
Yeah, I just want to talk about some key performance so far this season. I mean, there's quite a Welsh core of players in that Swansea City squad. A few of them obviously went to the World Cup. Joe Allen, probably the most notable one, and well known probably amongst most English football fans for sort of spells at Liverpool and Swansea. So has he been maybe a key performance since he's arrived back? I think Oliver Nitcham, I don't know how you pronounce that, in the midfield, but I think Yeah, 5 goals, 2 assists so far this season. I was in the Cameroonian World Cup squad as well. So has he maybe been a standout performer so far this season?
He's a funny one. Like he could be so good. He could be such a good player. And he was talked about like when he arrived from Celtic, everyone was really buzzing like last year. And over the year and a bit now, he's just a player that we just feel could be so good. And Russell Martin knows that, and he's had to manage him well. But he just also drifts off in games. So that he'll come out with an incredible goal for maybe a good 20 yards out, and everyone's thinking, wow, this guy's so good. But then also other games, we just don't see him. He's just running around doing nothing. So he's a 50-50 player. When you get him going with good form, he can be really good. In some ways, I feel he's always good off the bench, because it's always a stick or twist moment. You bring him on, it might not work out, but if it does, he comes out with a goal from outside the box, and then Russell Martin then feels he then needs to bring him like start in the next game, and then he gets started the next game, and then he doesn't perform the same way. So he can be so good. He is our top scorer with Joe Pirro, I think, both on 5 goals. But another Ollie Cooper, what a guy! Played so well this year, coming out from the academy. Been around with Swansea for so long, and just this season seems to have clicked. Actually, managed to in the end get a place on the aeroplane to go to Qatar as a backup for any injuries with Wales, and he deserved that. I was very surprised to see him first of all left out of the squad for the World Cup, but we must have been delighted to go over there with the squad and with the team, and he definitely deserved it. I think 3 goals this season, but has been really involved in the attacking play, and a player going into the season we probably wouldn't have been expecting much from, but has delivered.
Yeah, certainly one to look out for on Saturday. You've obviously been in the Championship now for a few seasons since your relegation from the Premier League, so you've seen teams that have got promoted. So interested to get your thoughts on Norwich City from afar, whether you've had much chance to watch them, and what your sort of thoughts and feelings are in terms of their promotion chances so far this season.
Yeah, it's funny. I do know you, Adam, don't I? I'm good mates with Adam, and we do speak quite a lot. And it has been interesting because I've been seeing the Norwich results, and I think going into the season, we both would have really thought Norwich would be high flyers in the league, and probably put in a typical Norwich Championship season where they get the automatic promotion, they go back up to the Premier League, then to get relegated, and then get promoted, then relegated again. But this season, it hasn't really been worked out. Obviously, Norwich are in 5th place and they're still in a strong position. But just speaking to you and your insight, it just seems like performances hasn't been there this season. I think often Dean Smith has been. People are saying, should he go? Is he the right manager? And then that's even been funny, because that's then led to Swansea fans getting really worried, because then we're thinking Russell Martin might then be off to Norwich. So it definitely seems like there hasn't been a consistency in good play at Norwich, and it looks like you've gone on some good spells and then you've gone on some bad spells. Somewhat similar to Swansea. I think in some ways we always do it the other time. Either Swansea do it on a good run, Norwich on a bad run, or Norwich somehow get some good results and then Swansea drop in form. And I think it has just been a yo-yo season for quite a lot of the Championship clubs. And you do feel Norwich, with their players, with their squad, with their know-how of being there in the Championship and getting promoted, that come the second half of the season, I think you guys have got to be top 6 minimum, maybe even higher.
Yeah, we'll now turn our attention to Saturday's game. Obviously, this is the biggest game on Saturday, of course. England might be playing France, but everyone's going to be glued on Norwich City and Swansea. So interested to maybe get your thoughts on, is there a certain player in the Norwich City squad that you fear on Saturday? I mean, there's obviously been a few that have scored past you in previous years. I think Timo Pukki's scored against Swansea before. So is there maybe sort of certain players in the squad that you'd fear, or maybe who's sort of the player you think in that Swansea squad that's going to be key for Saturday's battle?
Oh, I think you're giving it to me. It's got to be Pukki. He has scored against Swansea too many times for me to remember. There's a few that I've seen, and he always comes up with a goal. I don't think he's the same player. He's definitely not the same player. But often with these types of players, when they haven't been scoring that well, they haven't been maybe performing to their best level this season, there are some clubs that they just enjoy playing against. There's some clubs that they know they're going to score against. We've seen him score against us before, and he might just really enjoy the time back at the Liberty. But I'm actually quite confident on the weekend, so we'll have to wait and see. I'm really excited to see who starts. I mentioned Patterson started against Dundee on the weekend in our 2-0 winning that friendly, and he scored. So I think he's got to be starting. I'm really hoping that he will be getting a few more starts now under his belt to then get his match fitness properly up to then be playing more the second half of the season. I'm really looking forward to him back. So I'm going to go for Stab in the Dark with Patterson being the star man on the weekend.
Yeah, there's been a few exciting clashes between these two at the Liberty Stadium down the years. I think Norwich have enjoyed a few exciting results. There was a 4-1 win a few years back, a 4-3. I think it was a 3-2 as well. So, a relatively happy hunting ground at certain points. So with that, I'm interested to get your thoughts on the game and a score prediction for our viewers.
Score prediction. I think Swansea, the fact that England, everyone's going into it thinking England's this big game in France in the evening. Swansea fans, we enjoyed World Cup. We had a great time. Wales made their first World Cup. But now our attention completely focused back on the Championship. Like, we don't really care that much about the World Cup. Obviously, we'll be watching it as a spectacle, a neutral point of view. But that game is so big for England and in their mindset that I think we're going to be coming fully focused. This is Championship, football's back. I don't think many clubs will be really switched on and ready to go again, but I think we will be. So I'm really excited for it. I think we could have a little 2-0 victory against Norwich. I think we're going to get a clean sheet. Just got a funny feeling that Norwich will be a bit slow coming out of the blocks. And I am thinking maybe a Patterson goal and a Joe Pirou goal, because no Pirou, no party.
Yeah, I really hope you're wrong, but can't say I'm overly confident after the recent months of watching Norwich. So with that, we'll round off this week's Terrace Talk. Thanks for joining me, Chris. Really appreciate your time and your views on Swansea City. And yeah, obviously anyone who's a Pink and Plus subscriber, we've got lots of really great content across our channels at the moment. Connor's got an exciting interview on his way for you guys that he'd done yesterday, so that's well worth a watch when it comes. And we've also got Dean Smith tomorrow morning at Colney, so we'll get all the latest team news ahead of this one. Josh Sargent potentially available, potentially missing this Saturday. Could be a big loss if he's not available, particularly for Norwich when they're struggling to score goals in certain points in games, and he seems to be the focal point at the moment. So with that, we'll round off the show. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week for Blackburn's Terrace Talk.